When emotions are high and a relationship becomes painful or confusing, many women feel the urge to react immediately. Some feel like blocking him to protect their feelings. Others feel the need to call, text, or beg for answers just to understand what went wrong. These reactions come from a place of hurt and love, but they often lead to regret later. The truth is, the most powerful response is not always the loudest one. Real strength often shows up through calm decisions, self-respect, and emotional control. When a woman refuses to chase, argue, or beg for someone's attention, she sends a message without saying a word. And that message is powerful. Her value does not depend on someone else's approval. Instead of reacting emotionally, there is a smarter and healthier approach that changes everything, not only how he sees you, but how you begin to see yourself. When emotions are hurt in a relationship, the natural instinct for many people is to react quickly. Feelings of rejection, confusion, or disappointment can make the heart want immediate answers. A woman may feel the urge to call repeatedly, send long emotional messages, demand explanations, or block the person out of frustration. These reactions are human. They come from a place of caring deeply and wanting to protect oneself from pain. But emotional reactions, especially in moments of hurt, rarely create the outcome a woman truly hopes for. In fact, they often make the situation more complicated. When emotions take control, the response becomes louder than the message itself. Instead of creating understanding, it can create distance, tension, or regret. This is why one of the most powerful things a woman can do in difficult times. Relationship moments is something that seems simple but requires great emotional strength. Choosing silence with dignity. Silence does not mean weakness. It does not mean surrender. And it certainly does not mean that a woman does not care. In many cases, silence is one of the strongest responses a person can offer because it shows emotional control. When a woman reacts impulsively, she often gives away her emotional power. Repeated calls, long messages explaining feelings, or dramatic reactions can unintentionally signal desperation rather than confidence. Even though the feelings behind those actions are genuine, the impact they create may not reflect the dignity she deserves. A calm response, on the other hand, communicates something very different. When a woman steps back instead of reacting emotionally, she shows self-respect. She demonstrates that her feelings are important, but she will not allow those feelings to control her behavior in a way that diminishes her value. This level of emotional discipline sends a powerful message without needing many words. Silence creates space. In the middle of conflict or confusion, constant communication can sometimes make things worse. When messages keep going back and forth with strong emotions attached, both people can become defensive. Instead of understanding each other, they focus on protecting themselves from feeling blamed or criticized. But when a woman chooses calm silence, the emotional storm has a chance to settle. That silence gives both people time to think clearly. It allows reflection to happen naturally rather than forcing a response in the heat of the moment. Sometimes a man does not fully realize the value of a woman's presence until the emotional noise disappears and he notices the quiet. When someone is used to receiving constant messages, attention, or emotional explanations, they may take that energy for granted. But when that energy suddenly becomes calm and controlled, it can create awareness. He may begin to ask himself questions. Why is she suddenly quiet? Why is she no longer chasing answers? Why does she seem calm instead of emotional? Those questions often lead to reflection. More importantly, silence also benefits the woman herself. When she steps away from emotional reactions, she gives herself time to process her feelings properly. Instead of acting from pain or frustration, she begins to think more clearly about what she truly wants and what she truly deserves. In many situations, emotional reactions come from the fear of losing someone. The heart worries that if she does not fight for the relationship immediately, the connection will disappear forever. That fear can push her to say things she later wishes she had handled differently. But when a woman trusts her own value, she understands something important. A relationship that requires desperation to survive is not a healthy relationship. Real connections grow through respect, understanding, and mutual effort. They do not rely on one person begging the other to stay or forcing communication through emotional pressure. When love is genuine, both people naturally want to resolve problems and stay connected. Silence with dignity protects that truth. It allows a woman to maintain her self-respect while observing the other person's behavior more clearly. Instead of focusing only on her own emotions, she can watch how he responds when she is no longer chasing the conversation. His response often reveals more than any argument ever could. If he values the relationship, he will eventually reach out in a calmer and more thoughtful way. If he does not make that effort, the silence reveals something important about the true nature of the connection. Either way, the woman maintains her dignity, and dignity is one of the most attractive qualities a person can carry. A woman who handles emotional situations with calm confidence shows strength. She shows that her happiness does not depend on constant validation from someone else. She shows that she respects herself enough to pause, breathe, and respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Over time, this kind of emotional maturity builds a strong sense of self-worth. Instead of feeling controlled by the behavior of others, she becomes grounded in her own values. She learns that her peace is more important than winning arguments or forcing someone to understand her immediately. Silence becomes a form of wisdom. It reminds her that not every situation needs an immediate response. Sometimes the most powerful thing she can do is step back, protect her emotional energy, and allow time to reveal the truth about the relationship. And when a woman learns to carry herself with that level of calm strength, everything about the way others see her begins to change. One of the most common mistakes people make in relationships is believing that the more attention they give someone, the more that person will appreciate them. While kindness, care, and effort are important parts of love, constantly chasing someone's attention can sometimes create the opposite effect. When effort only flows in one direction, the balance of the relationship slowly begins to change. At the beginning of a connection, attention usually feels exciting. Conversations are frequent, curiosity is high, and both people are eager to learn about each other. Messages are answered quickly, plans are made easily, and there is a sense of mutual interest. But when one person begins to pull back or becomes less consistent, the other person may feel the urge to chase the connection harder. For many women, this reaction comes from a genuine place. When someone they care about becomes distant, they naturally want to understand why. They may send more messages, try to start conversations, or make extra effort to keep the connection alive. Their intention is not desperation, it is simply the desire to protect something that once felt meaningful. However, when one person constantly chases while the other person becomes more distant, a new pattern begins to form. The person who is being chased may slowly become used to receiving attention without giving the same level of effort in return. What once felt special begins to feel normal. The messages, the concern, and the emotional energy start arriving without them needing to do anything to earn it. Human nature sometimes responds to effort in unexpected ways. When something is always available, people can unintentionally begin to take it for granted. Not because they are cruel or intentionally careless, but because the mind adapts to what it receives regularly. This is why constantly chasing someone's attention can slowly reduce the value of that attention. When a woman is always the one initiating conversation, always checking in, and always trying to keep communication alive, she is the life of the party, the center of attention, the one who keeps the conversation flowing. The relationship begins to rely almost entirely on her energy. The other person may not feel the urgency to invest effort because the connection continues without it. But when that chasing suddenly stops, the entire dynamic changes. When a woman decides to step back and stop chasing someone's attention, she is not playing a game. She is simply restoring balance in the relationship. She is giving the other person the space to decide whether they truly want to participate in the connection. Silence after constant attention often becomes noticeable very quickly. The man who once received messages, updates, and emotional engagement may begin to feel the difference. The absence of that attention can create curiosity. He may start wondering why the communication has changed. He may notice that the energy he once received so easily is no longer present. This moment of awareness can sometimes lead to reflection. He may begin thinking about the woman who was once consistently present in his life. He may realize that the conversations he enjoyed, the encouragement he received, and the attention he experienced were not guaranteed things. They came from someone who genuinely cared. When that care is no longer chasing him, he begins to see its value more clearly. But the most important change in this situation does not happen inside his mind. It happens inside the woman herself. When a woman stops chasing someone's attention, she begins to reclaim her emotional energy. Instead of focusing her thoughts on whether he will respond or whether he still cares, she begins redirecting her attention toward her own life. She reconnects with the parts of herself that may have been neglected while she was trying to keep the relationship alive. She invests time in her personal growth, her friendships, her passions, and her goals. The energy that once went toward chasing uncertainty begins to fuel her own happiness and development. This shift is powerful because confidence naturally grows from it. A woman who focuses on her own life becomes emotionally stronger. She begins to carry herself differently. Her conversations become more balanced because she is no longer seeking validation. Her presence becomes calm rather than anxious. Confidence is something people notice immediately. When someone no longer appears desperate for attention, their presence becomes more attractive. It communicates that they value themselves enough to protect their emotional energy. This kind of self-respect often changes the way others interact with them. For the man who once experienced constant attention, the difference becomes clear. He may realize that the woman he took for granted has shifted her focus. The energy he once expected is no longer chasing him, and that change can make him reconsider the value of the connection. However, the purpose of stepping back is not to manipulate someone into returning. The real purpose is to restore self-respect and emotional balance. A woman deserves to be in a relationship where effort flows in both directions. She deserves someone who communicates because he wants to, not because he feels pressured. She deserves a connection where her attention is appreciated rather than assumed. When she stops chasing someone who is distant, she allows the truth of the relationship to reveal itself. If the man truly values the connection, he will begin to make an effort to reach out and rebuild communication. If he does not, the silence provides clarity about where his priorities truly lie. Either way, the woman gains something valuable. She gains control over her own emotional energy. She stops investing in uncertainty and begins choosing situations where appreciation and effort are mutual. She learns that her attention is not something to give endlessly to someone who does not value it. And once a woman understands the power of stepping back, she no longer feels the need to chase attention that should have been offered freely in the first place. There comes a moment in many relationships when a woman realizes that constantly focusing on someone who is uncertain about her is slowly draining her energy. At first, she may not notice it. Her thoughts are simply centered around the connection, wondering what he is doing, hoping he will call, thinking about what she could say to make things better. Because she cares deeply, much of her emotional attention begins to revolve around him. But over time, this kind of focus can quietly take something important away from her life, her attention toward herself. When someone spends too much time worrying about another person's feelings, behavior, or decisions, they often forget to invest that same care into their own growth and happiness. The days begin to revolve around waiting for messages, analyzing conversations, and hoping for change. Slowly, her emotional energy becomes tied to someone who may not be showing the same level of commitment. This is where one of the most powerful shifts a woman can make begins to happen. Instead of continuing to chase clarity from someone else, she turns her focus inward. She starts asking herself an important question: what would happen if I invested this same energy into my own life? This question can change everything. When a woman begins focusing on herself again, she starts reconnecting with the parts of her life that may have been overlooked. She remembers the goals she once had, the dreams she wanted to pursue, and the activities that once brought her joy. Instead of spending hours wondering what someone else is thinking, she begins spending time building the life she truly wants. This transformation does not happen overnight, but every small step makes a difference. She might begin by focusing on personal growth. That could mean learning something new, improving her career, developing a skill, or simply exploring interests she once put aside. These activities may seem small at first, but they slowly rebuild something very important: her confidence. Confidence grows when a person sees their own progress. As she begins achieving personal goals and rediscovering her independence, she realizes that her happiness does not depend entirely on someone else's attention. Her life becomes fuller, more interesting, and more meaningful because she is actively shaping it herself. Along with personal growth, she may also reconnect with the people who support and uplift her. Friends, family members, and positive influences in her life remind her that she is valued and appreciated. Spending time with people who genuinely care about her creates emotional balance. The more she invests in these relationships, the less emotional weight she places on someone who has been uncertain. Another important part of this transformation is self-care. Self-care is not only about physical appearance or relaxation. It is about treating yourself with the same kindness and respect that you once gave freely to someone else. It means protecting your emotional well-being, setting healthy boundaries, and allowing yourself to rest and heal when necessary. When a woman prioritizes her own well-being, she begins to see herself differently. She no longer feels like someone waiting for approval or attention. Instead, she feels like someone who is actively creating a life that makes her proud. Her mindset changes from waiting to growing. This internal shift becomes visible to others as well. Confidence has a way of showing up in body language, tone of voice, and the way someone carries themselves. When a woman focuses on her own progress instead of chasing someone's attention, her presence becomes calmer and stronger. She begins speaking with clarity rather than insecurity. She begins making decisions based on her own values rather than someone else's reactions. This kind of self-assurance naturally attracts respect. And interestingly, it can also change how the man from the past sees her. When he notices that the woman who once focused so much energy on him is now focused on her own life, it can create curiosity. He may begin to notice her confidence, her independence, and the growth she has achieved. The attention he once received easily is no longer being directed toward him. But the real purpose of this transformation is not to impress him. The real purpose is to strengthen her relationship with herself. A woman who learns to invest in her own life becomes emotionally stronger and more independent. She realizes that while love is a beautiful part of life, it should never be the only thing that defines her happiness. Her goals, passions, friendships, and personal achievements all become important parts of her identity. Once she reaches this stage of growth, her approach to relationships also begins to change. She becomes more selective about who she allows into her emotional world. She begins paying closer attention to how people treat her and whether their actions match their words. She understands that she deserves someone who appreciates her presence rather than someone who creates uncertainty. Focusing on herself does not mean closing her heart to love. Instead, it means preparing herself for a healthier and more balanced relationship in the future. When a woman builds a life that fulfills her emotionally, she no longer feels desperate for someone to complete her. She becomes someone who is already whole. And when someone who is whole enters a relationship, they bring strength, confidence, and clarity into the connection. That is why focusing on yourself is often the true turning point. It shifts your energy away from chasing uncertainty and toward building a life that reflects your true worth. One of the most powerful realizations a woman can have in her emotional life is understanding that love built on respect feels completely different from love built on desperation. When a relationship requires begging, constant proving, or emotional chasing, it slowly begins to drain a woman's confidence. She may start questioning herself, wondering if she is doing enough, saying the right things, or being patient enough to make the connection work. Over time, that kind of pressure can make her forget an important truth. She should never have to fight for basic respect in a relationship. A healthy connection begins with self-respect. Self-respect is not about pride or arrogance. It is about understanding your emotional value and refusing to allow anyone to treat your feelings as if they do not matter. When a woman respects herself, she does not tolerate behavior that constantly leaves her confused, ignored, or emotionally exhausted. Instead, she chooses to carry herself with dignity, even when situations become difficult. This kind of self-respect changes the entire dynamic of how others treat her. When a woman constantly begs someone to stay, calls repeatedly after being ignored, or tries to convince someone of her worth, she is trying to convince someone of her worth. She unintentionally sends the message that she believes her value depends on their decision. Even though her intentions come from love and vulnerability, the result can weaken the balance in the relationship. But when she stands calmly in her value, everything changes. A woman who respects herself does not chase someone who is uncertain about her. She does not plead for attention or demand affection from someone who is not offering it freely. Instead, she allows her behavior to reflect a quiet confidence. She shows through her actions that she knows what she deserves. This quiet confidence is powerful. When a man encounters a woman who carries herself with self-respect, he often begins to see her differently. Her boundaries communicate that she values her time, her emotions, and her presence. She is not trying to control him or force him to behave a certain way. Instead, she simply refuses to participate in situations that diminish her dignity. This approach creates clarity. If a man truly cares about the woman, her self-respect will often inspire him to step forward with more effort and sincerity. When he sees that she is not chasing him or begging for attention, he becomes more confident in his abilities and takes the lead. He understands that her presence in his life is a privilege rather than something he can casually take for granted. He may begin to communicate more clearly, show more effort, and treat the relationship with greater seriousness because he recognizes the strength she carries. However, there is another important outcome that can happen as well. If a man is not truly interested in building something meaningful, a woman's self-respect will naturally create distance. He may step away because he realizes that she will not accept half-hearted attention or inconsistent behavior. And although that outcome may feel painful at first, it is actually a form of protection. Self-respect acts like a filter in relationships. It removes people who are not willing to treat you with care and appreciation while creating space for those who truly understand your worth. When a woman refuses to beg or chase, she sends a clear message that she values genuine connection rather than temporary attention. This kind of clarity is essential for healthy love. A relationship built on respect allows both people to feel secure. Communication becomes natural rather than forced. Effort comes from both sides instead of only one person trying to hold everything together. Each partner recognizes the value of the other and treats the connection with care. In this environment, a woman does not feel like she must constantly prove herself. She does not spend her days wondering whether she matters. She does not feel anxious about whether the other person will suddenly disappear. Instead, she experiences stability and trust because the relationship is supported by mutual appreciation. Understanding this difference can completely change the way a woman approaches love. Instead of chasing attention, she begins looking for consistency. Instead of trying to convince someone to care, she observes whether their actions naturally show that care. Instead of ignoring her own needs to keep someone close, she begins protecting her emotional well-being. This shift is empowering because it places control back in her hands. She realizes that she cannot force someone to value her, but she can choose whether she stays in situations where her value is not recognized. She understands that her time, her energy, and her love are meaningful gifts that should be shared with someone who appreciates them fully. Over time, this mindset strengthens her sense of identity. She begins to trust her instincts more. She becomes more confident in setting boundaries and more comfortable walking away from situations that do not align with her standards. Rather than feeling desperate to hold on to any connection, she becomes patient enough to wait for the right one. And the right man responds very differently to this kind of woman. He does not see her confidence as a challenge or a threat. Instead, he respects it. He admires the strength it takes to value oneself in a world where many people settle for less than they deserve. Because of that respect, he approaches the relationship with sincerity and intention. He communicates clearly. He makes consistent effort. He shows appreciation for the connection they are building together. That is the kind of love that grows naturally and lasts longer. In the end, the greatest change does not come from blocking someone or begging them to stay. The greatest change comes from a woman realizing that her dignity is far more valuable than chasing someone who is unsure about her. When she chooses self-respect over desperation, she not only protects her heart, she also opens the door to the kind of love that truly honors it.